Welcome to the official podcast of DogsDaily.com, a Sports Illustrated channel.
Gets to the edge. Sonny Michel will send the Dogs home to the championship game.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you're in the right place.
Anthony Edwards hit the jam. Are you kidding me?
Hosted by Dogs Daily writers Jeremiah Stoddard, Kyle Funderburk, and Jonathan Williams.
Here's a pitch. Hit high out into right center with some carry. It's got a chance. This ball is out of here. Tucker Bradley has won it.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for a very special episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with my buddy Jonathan Williams here. We're ready to celebrate the national championship for Georgia after 41 years, before both of us were even remotely thought of. It's about time, and it's a very, very good feeling. As you can see, got the hat ready to go, got the shirt already.
AJ.
Jonathan doesn't have any of that stuff because he picked Bama to win the national championship game.
Whoa.
So he obviously doesn't have the gear because his team, I guess, didn't win. I don't know. But no, obviously that's a joke.
My crimson red underneath this hoodie. I'll hide my shame.
Obviously that's a joke. But just jumping straight into it then. I mean, we're just going to have a kind of a wrap session. Sit back, talk about the game, just kind of discuss little things here and there. There's nothing to look forward to, right? For the first time, we're not going to do like a here's what we expect to happen, here's what we kind of think's going down, except, over under of like the city of Athens and how much damage there is to it after the other night, plus what's going to be there this weekend after the parade. But jumping straight into it then, Jonathan, initial reaction, I know it had to be something like mine where it was just ecstatic and like just this unreal feeling. It didn't feel like it actually happened. You wake up the next morning just to pinch yourself to see like, hey, check Twitter and everything. It really did happen kind of thing. So what was your initial thought process?
Well, as soon as Keely Ringo picked the ball off, I immediately just turned to my dad. I was watching it with all my buddies back home. We've had a group of guys that watch UGA football games since I was probably 7 years old. It's like, this is a group of guys that I've grown up with. They're much older than me, but it's a group of guys that I've grown up watching football with. I've grown relationships with. And I just turned to my dad, and I literally picked him up screaming that Georgia just won the national championship before Keely even got in the end zone. I didn't even know he was in the end zone yet. But I just was screaming and looking at him because, 21 years of my life, I've been waiting to celebrate that moment with him. Everybody was like, you're going to watch the game in Athens. I was like, there's no better place I'd rather be than being at home with my dad to celebrate that type of moment. So I finally got to do that with him and everybody. So it was just so surreal. The following morning, I woke up probably about 8:30 in the morning, just probably still purely off of adrenaline that was still running from the game. And I watched like 4 hours straight of ESPN coverage of the national championship, just over and over and over, just looking at that title at the bottom of the screen that said Georgia claims national champion. And it's still so crazy to think about because, especially with me now being a student in Athens, I've kind of gotten to see like the vibe around campus, kind of see how everybody's feeling. It never happened in your lifetime yet. It hadn't happened in mine. Nobody at the University of Georgia right now as a student had seen anything like that in their lifetime. So it's just been great kind of seeing the morale around campus. Everybody's in a good mood. A freaking party of a lifetime happened after the game in Athens. Like we said, tons of property was damaged. People had fun as they should. So it was just a crazy experience that I am one thankful person to be able to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And to put in perspective, even UGA's first lady, right? Like, so Mary Beth, she was Kirby's wife, wasn't even alive the last time that Georgia won a national championship. She said that in a post-game interview. I saw it actually a couple hours ago as when I first saw that. I didn't realize that was the case either because I knew Kirby was a couple years old. So I just didn't think about that. But she wasn't alive even. So, of course, none of us were. I know a lot of people that have been or that were, and, it's just something that a lot of people have literally gotten to where they just go, well, this is just how it is for Georgia. We just and after, I get it. If you say you were 20 years old when the last time Georgia won, right? Like our age, last time Georgia won it. And then you're sitting there and just watching it, and 40 years go by of like, you've had good teams. You've had very good teams. You've had elite quarterbacks. You've had great defenses, and it just hasn't happened. So they've gotten to where, like, at that point, it was easy for them to turn around and just say, yeah, I mean, we just lose these games. Like, I don't know what else to say. It just happens, But at the end of the day, it finally happened. And so that's no longer something that you have to think as a Georgia fan. And even if you watch the SEC shorts, you saw this morning. If you don't watch the SEC shorts, you should, because they're hilarious. And for those that don't watch it, Georgia has this relationship on there with this character that's called Hope. And they broke up this morning. Yep. Georgia and Hope broke up this morning because Hope was no longer needed, because you had to hope you could do it, but now you know you can do it, kind of thing. So that's literally the mindset, and that's what's changed at this point. And by the way, Hope is now going to visit Texas A&M. That's what she said. So that they get to have Hope from here on out. It's no longer our burden. Yeah. We don't have to be concerned with that. But no, my reaction was very similar. But I watched it at home with just me and my wife, and I felt like that was a good call for me because I was very nervous. Big games like that, sometimes I get a little loud and I start yelling at the TV, getting mad and stuff like that. And I was like, it might be good for my self-pride, self-dignity to be in my own house and not around other people. And because if somebody says something, it's going to get under my skin or something like that, I'm going to get mad. And just watching, because all it would have taken is one person said something about putting JT Daniels in or something, I probably would have slapped him. Like it probably would have just lost my mind, because that game was just crazy. But no, the feeling was unreal. As soon as Keely Ringo caught the interception, I also didn't need to see that he got in the end zone, because it didn't matter. Yeah. Like it didn't matter if he scored. Scoring was icing on the cake, and it really, really sealed it to where like there was not even a glimpse of hope at that point. But the fact that he picked it off in general, there was only 1 minute and 7 seconds left, something like that. I think after the play there was less than a minute. Okay, yeah. At the end of the play, after he ran it back 75 yards,
it would have just been victory formation, needing the ball. But even then, it was just so much better to capitalize it off with a touchdown and putting 7 more points on the board. I think it actually resulted in UGA covering the over-under for the game, I think, if I remember correctly as well. So bettors love that move as well if you had money in the game. And then even for Nolan Smith to capitalize the game off with a sack as well, getting to Bryce Young, taking him down to the ground. All of it was just perfect.
That was my player to watch on defense for Georgia was Nolan Smith, because I felt like he was going to have a good game. Which we were talking about this before we came on the show, and we were seeing played a good game, and we were happy for seeing to get MVP, obviously defensive MVP. No hate on the kid at all, but I was a little surprised that he was the one that was selected on there. Once again, nothing against him, but when you had players like Keely Ringo that had 6 tackles, another pass deflection, pass breakup, and a pick 6. Yeah, to me that screamed defensive MVP. Or you could have looked at you had William Poole. He had a nice pass breakup in the end zone that would have been a touchdown for Alabama. You had Nakobe Dean, who had a sack. As always,
just played phenomenal.
And it just I think he was towards the top of the list of tackles and stuff too.
Channing
Tindall, who
great.
had, I want to say 6 or 7 tackles. I think 7 tackles along with the sack and a half. Yeah. As far as like who everybody was, I was a little surprised that it was Lewis Cine. Love Lewis Cine, and I'm happy for him, but I was a little surprised with it as well, because especially with Ringo having that pick 6, because to me, like all the other stuff I just listed is kind of irrelevant on it, because if it wasn't going to be Cine, it had to have been, like it absolutely had to have been Keely Ringo. Yeah, like, or at least that's what I would have assumed. So I was kind of surprised to see that part. That was, but I mean, at the end of the day, what I wasn't surprised to see was Stetson Bennett as the MVP, because I mean, he was steady. He was consistent. The only error that he really, really had, there was a couple little plays here and there, but like the biggest error he had was obviously the fumble, and that was barely a fumble.
Questionable.
I will say this. It was really close. It was really, really close. But I do think that like the angle of the ball kind of seemed like going up out of his hand a little bit. The crazy part to me of that whole thing was the fact that the guy just grabbed the ball and had like half an inch left of space inbounds, that it wasn't an out of bounds play. I know
there were Georgia fans that at that moment when they saw that happen, they're like, this is the play. Alabama always has one of these plays where it's just like everything fell into place for him. Like a guy just is casually going after the ball just to pick it up and give it back to the ref, more than likely. Like he's not trying to go make a play to recover a fumble. He's clearly just running out of bounds. The ball's right there. Happens to keep a foot in bounds as he gets the ball. And so I know there were Georgia fans that are like, that's it. Like, that's the play they're going to make that wins them a national championship. Like, everything just fell into place for them. And they did capitalize off of it, but it ended up not hurting Georgia in the end. So, and just like as your Nolan Smith pick panned out, my James Cook pick panned out in a way. He didn't have a ridiculous game by any means, but
a very big play that changed the momentum.
His big play absolutely flipped momentum. I mean, that is what sparked Georgia's offense in a dire time when they absolutely needed something going on offense. He breaks one loose down the field,
67 yards,
gets Georgia in position to score. They capitalize off of that. And from that moment, Georgia's offense didn't even look the same from what they looked before that. I mean, it was abysmal on offense. I mean, busted assignments, offensive line was just letting guys loose, and Stetson was having to scramble for his life. Things just weren't clicking. And so you had to think, like, at some point, this offense has to start clicking, you would think. And sure enough, James Cook does that. Stetson throws the miraculous touchdown to Adonai Mitchell, just absolutely beautiful. And that was all she wrote. That was all she wrote for Georgia to capitalize a national champion. And you have to just think, like, there is not a better person to win offensive MVP for Stetson, not only just for his performance in the national championship, but for what he has done for this team this entire season. I put out an article today, or maybe yesterday, it may have been posted, but it was the MVPs of the season. And I said that Stetson Bennett was the MVP for the offense this season.
Has to be.
He didn't put up the most glamorous stat line. Like, it wasn't something that you look at and you just go, holy cow, like, that's an incredible season. But in a time of need, he filled a void that was very important. When JT Daniels went down with injury, he filled a void for Georgia to keep them afloat and keep their goals in sight. Because, like we've said this before during the season, any other team that loses their starting quarterback, typically, they kind of have to reassess their goals for the season. Just take Texas A&M, for example. Zach Calzada played pretty well this year. I'm not saying that he was a reason why they kind of went under, like, they didn't play up to their standards of what they hoped to this season. But they kind of had to reassess themselves, saying, like, okay, like, yeah, we beat Bama, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to get through the rest of this season and make an SEC championship. Stetson Bennett won every single game that he played in the regular season. He had one slip up against Alabama, still got Georgia a seat at the table in the college football playoff, and that's all you needed. As Kirby Smart said, all I've ever wanted for this team was you just have to get those opportunities. He said in an interview with Reese Davis that we're getting at bats. And so I knew at some point we were going to hit a home run, because when you get at bats, eventually something is going to happen. You just have to keep getting those opportunities and keep getting plate appearances. And Georgia finally hit one out of the park when they got another opportunity. And Stetson played a huge role in that. Whether you like him or not, Stetson Bennett was a big part in saving Georgia's season.
Absolutely. And to clarify on this as well, because I know some questions that are going to come about him being the MVP of the season kind of thing. Because, yes, Brock Bowers had a season of a lifetime as a freshman, and like he almost broke. Like, I mean, he's like more than 2/3 of the way to like the all-time receiving records for tight ends at Georgia in one season for yardage, and just doubled any single season totals for any player when I was looking at some of this stuff the other day. So obviously he had probably the most outstanding season, right?
Oh yeah.
No doubt. If you want to look at like the most outstanding player in the entire like season, or who had the most outstanding performances, it's got to be Brock Bowers.
No, yeah.
Think about the term most valuable player.
Think about if you took Stetson Bennett out with JT Daniels being hurt, do you think Georgia still ends up in a national championship? Do you think Carson Beck leads Georgia to a national championship? Now, of course, we don't know.
You won't know.
Carson Beck very well could have, but we don't have to play the unknown. What we do know is that Stetson Bennett did lead Georgia to a national championship.
What we do know is the beginning of the season, what the depth chart looked like at quarterback was JT Daniels, Carson Beck, and then Stetson Bennett. But then after everything played out, it turned out to be JT Daniels got hurt and then had some stuff going on, so he didn't play anymore. And Stetson Bennett leapfrogged Carson Beck because they felt like he was, and that was in practice. Remember that week, right? We were sitting there looking, it kind of confused everybody. I was a little upset about this part at first too, because one, I didn't know, the unknown was out there of what Stetson would end up doing this season. By the end of the season, we became very big Stetson Bennett supporters well before Monday night, like a lot of people, by the way. Go back and watch the last 3 episodes. and you'll see us constantly talking about, actually, like probably the last like 2 months, you'll probably just see us since Florida. I think since Florida is when we started saying Stetson Bennett was our guy right now.
Get used to him.
And get used to it. That was more what we started with.
Yeah.
But my point of it is, back when the call was first being made, I remember the beginning of the week, Carson Beck was being prepared based on what Brooks Austin told us leading into it. Was he was being prepared to be the starter that week. I don't remember who we were playing that week. It was like the third game of the season or something like that.
It was Arkansas, I believe.
Was it Arkansas? It might have been Arkansas.
Or no, UAB. It was UAB.
So it was the second game of the year.
Okay, yes.
So it was the second game of the year, and 2 games in, or two days into practice, that switched to Stetson Bennett.
Yep.
It only after 2 days of practice, maybe Carson Beck was having a couple bad days and stuff, and they decided to go ahead and go with Stetson Bennett, and then history wrote itself. From there on out. Think about what this kid did. He was a former walk-on, had no scholarship offers from any SEC school at all coming out of high school, was a walk-on in 2017, was pretty much credited with like Georgia's win over Oklahoma by the staff and players and stuff like that at the time, because they said that him on the scout team was the reason they were prepared for Baker Mayfield, because he was able to do what Baker Mayfield was doing and help them be really, really ready to face him in that game. And so they credited him for their ability to withstand what Baker Mayfield ended up doing.
Yep.
And so you go from that, but then obviously he's got a ridiculous depth chart of 5-star quarterbacks in front of him. Think about 2017, who was all there in 2018. At that point, he decided that he wanted to transfer to go to a junior college so he could get that experience as a starter, get more game time, and really just build on himself, right? And then you fast forward another year, and he decides to come back to UGA. He's told, and this was said on one of the, I think it was ESPN, there was an interview or something like that, and it was said that basically he was told, because of Jamie Newman and DeJuan Mathis, that a staffer, that the coaching staff told him there was no realistic chance for him to actually play.
Yep.
He was told that when he came back, after he came back, and that was what the depth chart looked like. And so then you fast forward a little bit longer. Last year, all of a sudden, JT Daniels isn't ready to go. Mathis starts the first game against Arkansas and clearly has serious issues going on and just doesn't look like what he was supposed to be, which, once again, we wish the best for that kid as well. We always do on this show. 100%. But he definitely wasn't what he was supposed to be at that point, and he was struggling. I think he got rocked against Arkansas, and you could see that his mentality, he was just like he seemed like he was playing scared. They decided to go with Stetson Bennett in that game. Stetson Bennett proceeds to lead them to a victory on the road against an SEC opponent when he wasn't even supposed to be playing. Turns back the next week and just absolutely dominates Auburn the next week. I think it was like a 28-7 win, something in that same range, where he just absolutely lit them up. Played very well. Plays half the season. All of a sudden runs into week 4. Was it week 4 against Alabama?
Jeez, yeah,
I think it was week 4.
On.
It was early in the season. And all of a sudden goes and plays Alabama. And you see him get, obviously lit up against Alabama, throws a couple interceptions, just doesn't have a good game in general. Everybody starts talking about how he's too short and he gets all the passes batted, and that becomes the narrative for the rest of the season. And finally, JT Daniels is healthy for the last 4 games. So at that point, you saw that he was Stetson was struggling. So they did, when JT got healthy, they did take that change at that point because they felt like he was the one that gave him the best chance, right? So then it looks like it's JT Daniels' job to lose after going for 4 games, throwing for 1,200 yards, ridiculous stats, becomes a Heisman favorite to start the season out coming up this year in the offseason. And then this year comes around, Clemson game starts. JT Daniels plays pretty well against Clemson, wins the game, but didn't play lights out against Clemson. He played a good game, but not like an insane game. Only scored 3 points offensively in that game. Find out that he's hurt, right? So then you proceed to move on to your next guy, who then, once again, like we just gave the storyline of what this season was, where it was Carson Beck at first, but then all of a sudden, a couple of days into practice, they switch over to Stetson Bennett. And from there on out, it was Stetson Bennett's job. And the longer it took JT to get healthy, at that point, it got to where, like, can you make the move? Can you make that change at this point? Everybody says yes. Like, fans and the armchair quarterbacks or the Twitter coaches out there will say, yes, you make the change because he's been there long enough, he can do it, like, no problem. The coaching staff seemed to disagree with that, though. The coaching staff, at this point, my perspective on this is the coaching staff just chose Stetson Bennett, especially after post-game interviews with Kirby and the way that he talked about, like, sticking to his choice. Yep. And, like, his own words was that he, like, sticking to, like, his decision and seeing it pay off the way that it did, like how good that felt, like how everything played out. Like, so I at this point, I do think that Stetson Bennett was chosen over JT Daniels because of whatever was going on. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think more so to me, what's so impressive about what Stetson did this season is that, you touched on how he was told by his own coaching staff that there was no realistic chance of him starting.
That was just last year.
Even after he became the starter this season, every single interview he dealt with in the media was centered around, do you think you can lead this team to a national championship? Why do you think you're the quarterback? Do you think that there will ever be a quarterback change? Like Kirby Smart was bombarded with these questions. Stetson Bennett was being questioned by the media about his abilities to lead this team. The guy was 12-0, or not 12-0, but he was 10-0 or whatever as a starter in the regular season.
This season, yeah.
And he was being questioned about, do you think you have the abilities to lead this team and win? He was proving it, and he chose to just ignore everything. He didn't let that get under his skin, and it very easily could have, because anywhere you looked on social media, whether you looked at interviews with him in it, whether it was Kirby Smart in the interview, whether it was Todd Monken, everybody was questioning and doubting Stetson Bennett, or the majority of people. Now, there were some people who did support him, but for the majority, it was people doubting Stetson Bennett, and everybody was saying, where's JT? We want to see JT on the field. Do you think there's ever a chance that JT could get on the field? Like, what if this happens? What if Stetson throws an interception? People are asking those type of questions. Like, already saying, like, if he fails, do we get to see JT Daniels? Kind of basically saying, like,
they gave him the shortest leash of all time. Like, there was no actual leash. There was no leash. There was, like, the fans were out there holding the collar, right? Like, so no leash being used, just holding the collar, saying, like, the second that you even sniff towards the wrong direction, just yank him, kind of thing. Like that's how little trust there was. Absolutely.
And now he's a national champion, and you still have people.
Oh my God!
Have people on Twitter saying stuff like, "Well, I don't think Stetson was the reason we won that," and I'm not saying he is the reason. I think he played a big role, and people are saying like, "Well, we would have done the same thing with JT Daniels." Blah blah blah. Still, just like not even giving credit where credit is due. You finally got a quarterback that took you to a national champion. That's all that should matter.
Instead of admitting that they were wrong, they would prefer to still just discredit the fact that it didn't matter. Now they're saying what we said months ago at this point, and we had an episode that literally said
quarterback.
That was the title of the episode. It doesn't even matter who, or does it even really matter who plays quarterback for the University of Georgia?
I think in the end, it definitely did. Because those people who were wanting JT Daniels in the first half of the Alabama game, if Stetson Bennett was running for his life, and we're talking about a guy that has hit 22 miles per hour on the GPS tracker or whatever it's called, and you want to put JT Daniels, a guy that's supposed to just sit back in the pocket and make his reads to have success behind that offensive line, it ain't happening. It was not happening in that first half.
He was running for his life.
And it probably wasn't going to happen too much in the second half either. Now, I will say that them putting Broderick Jones in at left tackle and kicking Jamari Sawyer into the guard position saved the game.
Me too.
Saved the game. That's another prime example of Kirby Smart learning from past mistakes and proving that he can make mid-game adjustments, and he's not stubborn and saying, like, well, this is the guy I put as a starter, so that's who I'm sticking with the entirety of the game. He said, like, by God, if we're going to lose swinging and putting everything that we can and trying to do anything. And he did. And it succeeded, and it helped tremendously in the second half. But
yeah, for sure.
JT Daniels was not going to be lighting up the Alabama defense with Will Anderson and whoever else getting in the backfield.
Not without being able to extend the plays with his legs like Stetson Bennett
did. And that's something that Kirby Smart and Todd Monken said repeatedly. Why Kirby Smart? Why is Stetson Bennett playing quarterback? Well, he gives us the best chance to win. We feel he gives us the best chance to win. And also, his mobility and his speed is something that is very valuable to this team right now. Said it repeatedly. I mean, every single week, that's what he said. And people still seem to not believe him. And then finally, it shows up in a time where it mattered most, where Stetson's speed and his ability to evade pressure finally showed up in the most important moment of the season. And it played a huge role in Georgia being national champions. I mean, he tried to tell you all season long. Todd Monken tried to tell you all season long, we believe this guy will give you the best chance to win. And he certainly did. There was a lot of truth in that statement all season long because Stetson Bennett was a reason why Georgia won.
Oh, for sure. And at the end of the day, and I know a lot of people came out and said this was my favorite thing after Stetson Bennett ended up winning. It was, well, Stetson Bennett didn't win it. The defense did. Guess what? We also sat here in that same episode where we talked about it and said the reason we didn't think it really mattered too much if it was Stetson Bennett or if it was JT Daniels and starting at quarterback for Georgia was because that defense got to play every single game that the quarterback got to play. And so with that defense, there was no reason.
Let's talk about that too, because I think this is another moment where Kirby Smart. I wouldn't have been as good of a person as Kirby Smart was about this, because in my press conference, I would have been saying some other things, probably kind of saying like, you need to say sorry, whatever, but not
apologize,
not in that nice of tone. But everybody told Kirby Smart that you cannot win with a good defense in this era of college football. A good defense is not going to get
Kirby
you anywhere.
shuts so much stuff up with this.
Everything.
There's so many things.
You need an elite quarterback to win a national championship, and you can't have this elite defense carrying your team to a national championship.
Defense can't win championships.
He did both
anymore.
of those in one season and won a national championship.
Defense can't win championships anymore. That's what everybody said. That's exactly what everybody said.
And he built the perfect defense for it. I mean, we probably will never see another defense like that unless Kirby Smart pulls something magical out of his hat again on the recruiting trail and puts together such an elite unit like he did this year.
Let me pause you there, though. Think about that. He does. He has. Look at there's a reason that he's got a top 3 recruiting class every single season. And it's because, especially on the defensive side, you saw the cornerbacks that are coming in this year.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there was an issue at corner this year where there wasn't as much depth and there was some inexperience. And we're playing a freshman, who the freshman ended up, by the way, having the pick 6. So that's neither here nor there.
I think this is where it gets scary for the rest of college
football. He's a redshirt freshman, but still, he had a shoulder injury last year, couldn't play at all. So we do know he was a redshirt freshman. Still stands.
I think this is where it gets scary for the rest of college football, because everybody was saying Kirby Smart has to get over that hump. He has to get the monkey off his back, and he has to be Alabama and win a national championship.
He's recruiting with a ring.
He did that. And what do Kirby Smart every year, he's recruiting with a national championship.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah. We haven't seen that, but we will get to here very shortly.
Oh, I'm excited.
And then also on top of that, he's going to have a great defense every year. Every single year he's had a great defense. And so now that he has shown that he can win a national championship with an elite defense, he still hasn't had this elite quarterback prospect yet. So now he has a Brock Vandegrift on the depth chart. He has a Gunnar Stockton on the depth chart. Maybe JT Daniels, Carson Beck, whoever else, maybe a transfer. We don't know how it's going to play out.
He's got those 4 quarterbacks to go into this year.
When he does,
maybe Stetson Bennett. We'll get to that in a second.
So when he does find this elite quarterback prospect and he can consistently get them playing and he kind of gets in a rhythm, I think you're going to see Georgia go on a serious run where you're just kind of seeing where, Georgia wins another national championship. A couple years later, they just won another national championship. I think this is where things really start to fall into place for Kirby, because now he knows the recipe. Now he knows what he needs to do to win a national championship. He knows what it takes, and he did it without the things that everybody said was required.
Without breaking his mold, yeah.
Yes.
He stuck to his mold, and he was able to do it. And let's one last thing I want to comment on this before I take the conversation completely into the Stetson Bennett of the future potential and everything like that was the biggest conversation from Georgia fans. It was 2 things, which Kirby mismanaged the quarterback room, doesn't know how to, develop the quarterbacks. He can't seem to do this right, that, the other. Let's talk about developing the quarterback. Just rewind to 10 minutes ago when I sat here and gave the entire breakdown of what we saw from Stetson Bennett, like in his career, where he was at, where he went, all this stuff. Comes back as a walk-on, or it comes back on scholarship after originally being a walk-on. Talk about developing a quarterback. They made Stetson Bennett a national championship quarterback between Todd Monken and Kirby Smart and Buster Faulkner. Between those guys, they made him a national championship winning quarterback.
I mean,
we talked about
how different he looked compared to last season and this season. I mean, just between that year, we talked about how Stetson Bennett just looked more comfortable in the game. He looked a lot more confident as well. Like Stetson Bennett throwing a deep ball last year did not look like Stetson Bennett throwing a deep ball this year. It was maybe like 40% chance of hitting last year, maybe. Whereas this year, he was hitting them every single time. He hit one to George Pickens in the national championship. He hit one to Adonai Mitchell that we touched on. I mean, anytime that he had an opportunity to hit a guy for a deep shot, it was money more times than not. I would say like 80% of the time he was hitting his guy, and usually in stride for the most part. It wasn't like he was underthrowing him every time or anything, but he was making those opportunities count. And that was important.
And yes, I know. And Jonathan knows that the A.D. Mitchell touchdown was like on his back shoulder like this, like going over. But where's he supposed to throw that ball? You want him to put it.
It was where only AD could catch it.
The corner had his back turned. It was where he could catch it without taking him out of bounds. The sideline was right there at the end zone. And then the back of the end zone straight ahead of him, you can't lead the receiver. If you do, you lead him out of bounds, or you make it to where the only way he's going to catch it is to have a phenomenal toe drag catch or something like that, rather than to his back shoulder where he can turn back to it and potentially get a pass interference call too, because the defender could start to pull on him, which some people said that there could have been one on that play as well. But that George Pickens throw was money. George Pickens didn't dive as much as he kind of fell with it.
Yeah.
He was kind of stretched his arms out like this.
It was more so, let me make sure I catch this ball.
Yeah, and twist and pull it into your chest, because he was going to stumble and fall by running through it. Like, I watched that play back just to confirm my thoughts on it, and literally his arms, he catches it right here, his feet are still under him, and he falls forward. It was not like the George Pickens catch against Cincinnati where he straight laid out for it. That was
George.
Unreal. It was a great throw. So his deep ball, his accuracy on the deep ball, and his confidence with the deep ball, extremely high development this year, because like you said, last year he didn't have that. He just didn't.
And so talking about the offense, I want to bring this up while it's on my mind. So it was 3rd and 1. I think it was third quarter maybe, or I may be getting it mixed up, but you can correct me because I'm sure you'll remember. 3rd and 1, and Todd Monken calls a screen pass
to Brock Bowers.
Yep. I mean, the kahunas on a man to call that on that, because if it doesn't hit, you're getting cussed at. You're getting blown up on social media for saying.
And Kirby Smart's probably going off on.
And
you're
getting because Georgia was gashing them in the run game, and you're 3rd and short. You're thinking, okay,
and you got Zamir White in the backfield,
and he has the kahunas to call a screen pass.
It was a 3rd and 1 at like somewhere between like the 10 and 15, right?
It was like 20-yard line ish, kind of
maybe
in that range.
Okay. It was a little further back than I thought, but yeah,
maybe.
3rd and 1.
I don't know, but it was in the red zone area, and Stetson perfectly throws it over the edge rusher coming, places it right in Brock Bowers' hands, and he goes for a touchdown. That moment, because in my opinion, I was kind of questioning what Todd Monken was calling in that game, because there was like moments you would gash them for big yards on the ground, and then you go pass, and then you have to punt. But then in that moment where I was like, Todd Monken said right there, we're not coming here to get a first down. We're scoring a touchdown. We're taking advantage of this moment. We're going to win the game right there.
The fact that they didn't run that ball on that play tells me they weren't settling for a field goal.
No.
If they got stopped, they were going to go for it.
Yep.
If they were a yard short, now if they lost yards, if they lost like 4 yards, it's a different ballgame then. But like if they continue to get to a 4th and 1, I think at that point they go for it, because to throw the ball in that situation really makes you think that they're really going for that touchdown.
And I think that's a moment where, because everybody says Kirby gets conservative in big games. Like he definitely
did not in this one.
In that moment, that was an area of me where I said, wow, that's not a typical Kirby move right there. Now, and I think that also shows Todd Monken's the guy calling the shots, because again, Kirby Smart's probably not calling that play on 3rd and short. So we said all year long, and ever since Todd Monken came on campus, was that he brought Todd Monken on to run his style of offense and to call the shots. That's a Todd Monken shot right there. And you can just tell like how Kirby Smart's learning from his past experiences. And they said, like, this time we are not going to get beat. We're not letting it happen. We are taking advantage of this opportunity. And that was a moment in the game where I think they said, let's freaking win this thing. We're not running up the middle for a 1-yard gain and a first down.
Well, let's like add into like the, not even just like the keeping the pet, like, you know, the aggressiveness going and stuff, but like the confidence they had to have in Stetson Bennett in order to continue to throw the ball. Because the last couple of touchdowns were touchdown passes.
Yeah.
You know, outside of the pick 6, he threw 2 touchdown passes late in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So they had confidence to put him in that close game, even after the fumble on it, which once again, like you said, was a questionable thing in like the first place. And then how insane it was that the Bama actually recovered that in the first place as well. Even after that, right? They still had that confidence in him to go out there and protect the ball and throw it in a close game, going down the wire and going against what Georgia usually did, right? In a game like that where it's a 1-score game, not like chasing from behind, like they were down by like 1 point, right? It was an 8-9 game, you know, at one point. So you see that being the situation. That type of game, like you said, that's a Kirby Smart. I'm running the ball, you know, twice, throwing the ball on 3rd down. That's what Kirby Smart of old used to do in those situations, because especially when you've seen the run game started to work, I was getting mad early on in that game, especially after the first half. I even texted somebody else, and I was like, this is ridiculous. We have 11 rushing yards in the first half. I was like, this is the same game plan as we had in the first game against Bama, and we didn't run the ball, and it really killed us.
Yeah.
And then we started the second half, and that's when we started gashing them on the ground. We started having big runs, and all of a sudden the game just changed. But they showed that, like, they weren't predictable.
Yep.
And I think that's where they were able to close it out, and that's why they were able to win it like that, was because they didn't just go, all right, we started having a little bit of success in the run game. We're just going to just ground and pound the rest of the way and go back to the Kirby Smart of old. We're going to mix it in there, and then we're going to throw the ball still and keep them guessing and make them not know and not be certain of what we're going to do. And so, like, at that point, it's just an incredible game plan at the end of it. Like, the way they played that second half, let's say second half adjustments. Second half adjustments or halftime adjustments that's what wins championships.
Kirby Smart killed Georgia in the past against Alabama.
It's absolutely killed Georgia in the past. But I also said this too. I was talking to somebody else, and I said, I think the reason Georgia won this game is because they were losing the game until late in the third quarter. Yeah. And it's because it gave Kirby Smart the confidence to be like, all right, well, we don't have a choice. We got to play aggressive.
It was no longer we can't force anything anymore. It's more so we have to make something happen now.
Exactly.
Which is when Georgia plays best, is when there's like, we have to make something happen. Let's go do what we do best.
And you're not like, you're going to make something happen, but you're barely losing like that. And it's not like you need to go out there and score 14 points to take the lead back. We need to make something happen before this game gets out of control. The game's in control right now, so we have to go out there and capitalize on our opportunities and our moments and get down the field and score before it gets to a game where we're trailing, and all of a sudden we have to abandon whatever game plan, a mix of run, pass, whatever we want to do, and we can't do what we want. We have to do what we have to do. They decided to keep their foot on the gas, play aggressive, and it absolutely paid off. It shut up every argument that anyone has ever had against Kirby Smart. Can't develop players, can't develop quarterbacks or manage the quarterback room, turned a walk-on quarterback into a national championship quarterback. Can't win the big games, chokes in those situations, and lets games slip away in the second half. Absolutely played aggressive and kept his foot on the gas to go out there and win that game in the fourth quarter, where you even have Nick Saban coming up at halftime and saying, you absolutely beat our butt in the fourth quarter. So that's it. Completely threw everything else out the window. Yeah, you knew he could recruit, and everybody always said this. Rival fans always wanted to say, you know, all of that talent on the roster, what's he done with it? He can't do anything with it. Guess what? He has the ring now. Now he's going to be recruiting with a ring. Think about that. He's already been in top 3 recruiting classes every single year, and now he's recruiting with a ring on his hand. When he walks into those in-home visits, or when they come onto campus, players come to campus, he shows them the trophy case. This was last year. This is what we got. There's an empty space right next to it. Come help us get it.
Yep. And I just want to go back one more time, because I think this was another moment in the game where it was just kind of not necessarily uncharacteristic, but it really showed to me that Kirby Smart and them were not scared. They did not go into this game scared. And it was the 4-play drive that led to the A.D. Mitchell touchdown. Because it basically seemed to me that they looked at Stetson and they said, go win us this football game right now. Because you had the pass to Jermaine Burton, I believe it was, to kind of get it started off. Then you had the pass to McIntosh. And then there was another play before that I can't remember what happened. Or maybe I'm kind of mixing them up a little bit. But
I'm not sure.
I know the McIntosh pass was in there, I think. And then also there was one to Jermaine Burton. And then they capitalized off of in my opinion, I don't even know that Stetson knew that he got an offsides call in that moment. I think he knew. I think the whole way
I think he saw it.
I don't know that he did, because to me it seemed like it happened all so fast, and he just knew that he was going to A.D. Mitchell the whole time. In my opinion, that's kind of what it looked like to me in real time.
I think he probably goes towards A.D. Mitchell in general on there. Like, I think that was the read. Whether or not he forces one, I don't know, but I think that was the read on there. But I felt like he saw it was a free play, because I think they jumped on like the interior, didn't they? So it was kind of in front of him. Like he was in the shotgun and stuff. I think he saw them move and hands get pointed and like, why they go. They snapped it real quick like that.
The only reason why I say that, though, is there was some other close calls with Alabama kind of being on the verge of being offsides or not. And so I didn't know if Stetson maybe was like, well, I don't know if I get that offsides call right there, because it really seems like we haven't gotten too many this game. And I don't know if he had time to see the flag actually thrown. So I don't know. If he did, that's also great.
He didn't have time to look for a flag to be thrown. I'll say that for sure, because he didn't hold that ball long. He dropped back and he just let that thing fly.
And Stetson even said after the game, he said, after that fumble, I just told myself I'm not going to be the reason why we lose this game. And instead, he turned into one of the biggest reasons why they won that game and hitting A.D. Mitchell in the end zone. For what seemed like a play that Alabama typically makes late in the game, finally Georgia gets their turn to make that play in the game. Deep shot to the end zone that just pierces Alabama fans' hearts and rips it out of them, and you get crowned as national champions because of it. So whole game was just beautiful for a Georgia fan, especially this entire season was just great for Georgia fans in general, because I don't want to say that losing to Alabama made this victory even sweeter. Like losing to them in the SEC championship game just made this victory even sweeter, because you lost to them 4 times prior to that. But for this team to get to avenge their own loss, like this group of players get that in a game that they lost together in the season, they get to avenge that, and then also along with avenge every other loss that happened prior to that. I think that makes the moment even more special for them and even sweeter for them to take a national championship away from Alabama, because we knew at some point it was going to have to beat Alabama in the national championship. I don't think anybody cared for the first one who it was going to be against. I think it could have been against San Jose State. Georgia fans were going to be completely satisfied with a national championship regardless. But you knew at some point you were going to have to beat Alabama. And
I'm so glad
you cleared the road.
Oh my God, I'm so
all
glad.
In one game. You got the national championship out of the way. You got over the Alabama hurdle and everything else. Like, you proved every single question that surrounded this program got answered in one game. And I think that's so beautiful.
I laughed. I found a couple of Alabama fans on Twitter. Alabama fans have been real salty.
Shocker.
It's really funny to see, because you don't see them in this spot. And we've never been on the other side of this, watching them. So it's been real funny, because one of them decided to say that, they didn't win the SEC championship, so it doesn't really count. You didn't win the conference title, so it doesn't count. And I was like, other people already
want to go back 4 years ago.
Other people already responded, so I didn't even bother tacking on, because I already saw the response too. But I was like, they must have forgot 2017, 2018, because they didn't even play in the SEC championship game. They didn't even get there.
Didn't even win their own division.
Auburn did. And so then you're going to come out and say, then go ahead and give Georgia that national title then, if you want to make that your argument.
I guess the drought ended 4 years earlier than we thought.
I guess in 2018 they did, if that's your argument, because I saw that and I was like, this has got to be a joke, right? Like, that's not even the closest thing to a good argument that you should have made as far as that goes, because Bama doesn't win the SEC title every year that they win a national title, because that year being the biggest one, obviously, it happens. It just does. And also in 2011, Georgia played against LSU in the SEC championship game, and then LSU played against Bama in the national championship game. Twice.
Yeah.
Twice. Yeah. They have, in my recent history that I can recall off the top of my head, that they didn't win their conference title. Didn't even play in their conference title. So, to make that argument, it just absolutely made me laugh. And if other people didn't already respond, I was going to, but I didn't even want to bother. I was like, this is just sad.
My favorite ones were the ones talking about injuries, because I do think Jamison Williams being hurt, and really it's super unfortunate that it happened. But
yeah,
I
let's
do think
say that first.
That was a huge.
We don't want injuries to happen. It was
absolutely not. Especially an ACL tear, which they confirmed that
to a first round draft.
Yeah, a guy that's going.
Rough.
It really does suck, and I really do hate that. You just don't. You don't ever want to see that happen. Mm-hmm. And I do think that had a huge impact on the game. Really benefited Georgia, because you're not having to cover that guy anymore. Yeah. You're not having to worry about him.
It makes a difference.
But a theme for Georgia this season was overcoming injuries
all year long.
There was 14 players on the injury list at one point, and notable starters. Tyke Smith done for the year. Tate Ratledge done for the year on the first drive. It's starting right guard.
First drive of the game.
First drive of the season, done for the year. JT Daniels, starting quarterback, he gets hurt. Had to replace him.
Let's talk about injuries and talk about the fact that
Dan Jackson, a walk-on safety, has been playing for Georgia this season, and he's been filling the void of Tyke Smith. Chris Smith was hurt at one point this season. Tons and tons and tons of injuries that Georgia had to overcome.
Chris Smith was hurt in the game against Alabama in December. He played, but he was hurt. Yeah. He was still injured in that game. And so, he was hurt in that game. We had George Pickens for that game in early December as well, but George Pickens was just back. Well, and he's on a snap count. He's not playing that much. He had one catch against Bama in the national championship game. That's the number one receiver for Georgia. That was our first-round draft pick kind of guy right there prior to this year, where he's been out all year. Don't have Dominic Blaylock still. We can go down the list of receivers and other people. Eric Gilbert didn't play.
It seemed like Georgia was down to 3 guys at wide receiver at one point this season.
It's just funny.
That's all they had. But even better about it,
freshman wide receivers and tight ends who led Georgia in
the best part of it all is that Alabama won a national title at the expense of Colt McCoy shattering his shoulder.
Yep.
And
that was Nick Saban's first one, wasn't it?
Yes. But you didn't hear Alabama fans saying like, "Oh yeah, well, it doesn't really count. Colt McCoy was hurt, and so that's the reason why."
It's football, man. People get hurt.
Injuries are going to happen. It's something that you have to withstand to win a national championship. In order to win a national championship, you have to have a lot of things go right for yourself, and you have to overcome a lot of obstacles more times than not. Georgia absolutely did that. They had to overcome injuries of their own. It's unfortunate that it happened to Alabama in the national championship. It's unfortunate that they lost Mechie before the national title game as well. But it's football, man. That's what you have to overcome. That's what you can't just sit there and complain about it. It's next guy up. We always talk about how it's always next guy up. That's what Alabama fans are always preaching as well, probably with how well they recruit. It's always next guy up. You recruit well for those situations. It's why Georgia goes and gets a Brock Bowers, because when Darnell Washington got hurt before the season even started, you had him to come fill the void. It's why you recruit at the level that you do, so that way when injuries happen, you have the guys to come fill in those voids, and it doesn't hurt you, and it doesn't set you back as much.
They're the ones that started the saying of always just reloading.
Yep.
And not like restarting, but just reloading, because you already have that guy in the chamber or in your clip ready to put into the chamber and just go. Like they're the ones that started that statement. So like if you didn't have somebody to put in after those guys, that's not Georgia's fault.
That's on you, man.
That's not Georgia's fault, because Georgia, guess what? Once again, had freshmen. You had some of them maybe red shirts. That's fine, but you had a true freshman in A.D. Mitchell leading the team in receiving stuff throughout the year, and especially late in this game we saw. Ladd McConkey was a freshman. I think he's a red shirt freshman. He's the red shirt freshman. Brock Bowers, a true freshman. And then those are the 3 guys that were leading Georgia's receiving all season.
Yep.
All season.
You have Cedric Van Pran as your starting center, who was a redshirt freshman as well.
Who got put in, because of injury in the first game.
First game of the season, he got put in because they had to move Erickson over to right guard.
Erickson moved to right guard. Erickson hurt his hand at one point too, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so that's what started to, and then they put him over at right guard because Tate Ratledge went down, which that's the other part I want to talk about. And this actually led perfectly back into it, because you want to talk about injuries, right? That ended up being huge, but it ended up being something that Georgia benefited from because of the way it played out. But the starting right guard went down early in this game. And what does Georgia do? I was worried about this. I didn't know what we were going to do. I thought we were about to put Xavier Truss in. And I was like, that's what I expected, because he's played that position this year. We have not seen Sawyer go into guard this year.
No.
We haven't seen that. So when he went down, I was expecting that to happen. Kirby goes, nope, don't want that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in Broderick at left tackle and shift Sawyer over to right guard.
The best talent on the field, in my opinion. That was a moment where Kirby Smart said, I'm putting my guys that have the most
That
talent.
was the coaching decision that won the national championship right there.
This is not a moment where I'm saying, all right, seniority kicks in, who we got, who's the most experienced right here. He said, Broderick Jones, time to man up. You're going in the game, and Sawyer, you're getting kicked over to guard.
Technically, Broderick is he a redshirt freshman?
I think he is a redshirt freshman.
At left tackle. Left tackle going up against Will Anderson.
Another one.
Will Anderson is who he had to match up against because of that. Yeah, DJ Khaled over here.
And then also losing Adam Anderson. You had to put in Robert Beal. I mean, that was your biggest.
And Robert Beal ended up leading the team in sacks.
It was Adam Anderson was your biggest playmaker on defense, arguably, throughout the entire season.
Oh,
and then you lose
just straight up.
You lose him midway through the season, and you got to replace him. But Georgia really never missed a beat, really, at that spot either on defense. So Georgia overcame plenty themselves throughout the entire season.
The depth stepped up.
Not even just one game. Yeah. They had to do it throughout the entire season.
So go ahead and make the argument about being injured at wide receiver at one position, and then saying that you got your freshman corner, it got picked on, and that's the other side of it, right?
Boy, do we have something to tell you.
A freshman corner or a redshirt freshman corner got a pick 6 against Bama to seal the game, and made a couple of big plays throughout the game, and you can't make that that argument as far as why you lost this game. Georgia just Georgia just
They played
won.
better. They played
Georgia
a better
just
game.
outplayed, outcoached, and just outlasted at the end of it. Like
Kirby
it just
Smart
is.
said it himself, I believe, in the interview with Reese Davis. He said in 2018, I felt like we had the best team in the nation. I felt like we had the best team out of everybody, but not the best team doesn't always win the national championship. It's a team that plays the best. Now, granted, Georgia probably did have the best team in the nation this year, but they also played better than Alabama did when it mattered most.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you crap the bed and you don't play up to your standard in the biggest game, it doesn't matter. Whoever plays the best
Or
that
if
day,
coaching doesn't come through.
whoever plays the best that day is who's going to win the football game. And that's what happened on Monday.
And with all that being said is why I came in. We both sat here and we talked about just being worried about going into this game, right? And I told everybody that I talked to, this was my exact thing that I told. I told somebody this the day of the game when I was talking to them on Monday. And I said, Georgia has the better team. I don't think that's the question at all. I was like, if Georgia wins this game, it's going to be because Kirby Smart finally gets rid of whatever's going on mentally for him in these types of games that's caused him to lose these big games or slip up or keep his foot off the gas and let the other team overtake the leads that he's had in these games. I was like, it's going to come down to coaching in this game. And if we win, Kirby Smart is going to finally shake off his demons in those big game moments, right? Like that's exactly what it was going to come down to, because I don't think there was any question that the roster from top to bottom, like overall, Georgia had the better team. But at the same time, Bama had the better players, like individual players.
Well, they had the best player in college football, arguably.
They did. They definitely did, because they had the best defensive player and then the best offensive player, like quarterback.
No doubt.
And by the way, Bryce Young, the best quarterback to ever play at Bama, in my opinion. Like statistically, that's not even an argument. The guy finished. I know he had about 4,500 yards before this game, and he threw for 360 or so. So that means he probably threw for darn near or right at 4,900 yards this season, and 50 touchdowns almost, 46 probably, I think, if I'm thinking correctly from what I saw the other day before the game. Mm-hmm. He's probably around 46 touchdowns and 4,900 yards, along with 7 interceptions, because I think he had 5 before this game and Georgia picked him off twice. So you had the Heisman winning best quarterback that Bama has ever had. You had your elite quarterback. So this part's for Georgia fans. Bama had their elite quarterback, and they lost.
To a walk-on.
An elite quarterback doesn't win you a national championship. The whole team does, and the coaching does. All of that stuff plays in. So that's why Georgia won. They may not have had an elite quarterback this year, because an elite quarterback this year was not necessary. Stetson Bennett was exactly what they needed. They were able to do it with the defense, with the young guys stepping up on offense, with Kirby Smart really out-coaching Nick Saban for once in his career. For the first time, he was able to do that after the 4th matchup with him. That's why they won. An elite quarterback doesn't win you national championships if the other parts aren't there.
Well,
they don't.
And if you were to do a fantasy draft between Georgia and Alabama, the first 2 picks are going to be Will Anderson and Bryce Young.
Absolutely.
But after that, you're going Georgia. It's a long time before you pick another Alabama player.
You'll probably go 4 or so picks, and then you'll go for a Mechie, and then you'll go for Jameson Williams.
That's the big difference, in my opinion, is that it's nice having the 2 best players, obviously, in the game, but Georgia, as a collective unit, had the better team, because it was just like from top to bottom. You never saw a guy and you were like, he's questionable, in my opinion. It was just from top to bottom, Georgia had a consistent unit together that gelled really well, that always performed up to standard more times than not, and made big plays when they were needed. And that's bottom line.
Justin, thanks for watching, but if you
had to stop me mid-sentence.
This just got you. Justin has requested us do.
We failed him in Clemson. This is going all the way back to Clemson.
The beginning of the season.
He asked us to do a long snapper and a punter breakdown.
We actually studied on that too.
And I actually did research. Yeah. We did research on the subject, and we completely forgot. But now Justin finally gets his moment in the sun, and we get to highlight how, yes, long snapper and punter.
Jake Camarda was the better punter for sure.
Jake Camarda definitely did play a difference in that game. He pinned Alabama deep in their own territory numerous times to make them, force them to drive the ball deep, a long way down the
snapper.
field.
excellent. I didn't see a bad snap to Jake Camarda
every
at
time
all.
in the chest, right in the numbers. I mean, it's a big difference. It definitely played a big part. So that's elite analysis from Justin. We really appreciate that. If you want more of that, ask him. Hit him up on Twitter for more elite breakdowns like that for elite analysis.
That's going back. That literally goes back all the way to the first game of the season versus Clemson. I forgot about that too. Oh, well, appreciate you watching and jumping in there. That's always fun. But now I lost my train of thought entirely.
I know, he stopped me mid-sentence. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like,
that was good. Oh, man. But all right, so the last thing I want to discuss on this, because now we got to think about the future, right? It's always fun. We will sit here and talk about this game for weeks to come, for the entire offseason. This game is going to be referenced.
Been a long time coming.
This game is going to be referenced on every single episode, probably for like a year straight at this point. That's going to happen. But what we need to talk about now is there's a lot of decisions that have to be made for a lot of these young guys, right? Like you're seeing a lot of guys, announce they're going to the NFL, and there haven't been a bunch of that yet. James Cook is the only one that I think I've seen say that, which I don't think anyone's surprised about. I think he earned his money this year.
No doubt.
He earned his money this year. A lot of guys hitting the transfer portal. You've seen Justin Robinson hit the transfer portal. Keely Ringo is, I think, going that direction.
Jalen Kimber.
Not Keely. Sorry.
Jalen Kimber. And then also, who was the other guy? There was another one. Jalen Johnson.
Jalen Johnson. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Jalen Johnson also hit the portal. So you're kind of already seeing, Bama had 7 yesterday, I believe, alone.
I think Georgia's only got 3 or 4.
But there's going to be more to come, so just keep an eye on that.
Yeah, Keely Ringo is staying in Athens.
Yeah.
That's
he was just talking about how he was the MVP of the national championship, and he was like,
now
get him out of here.
He's leaving.
He's hitting
I don't
the
want to hear from the
portal.
guy that couldn't even pick Georgia, hadn't bought any Georgia stuff for the national championship.
Okay? There's no article of proof or anything.
There's no proof?
No, I did not get to submit my score. No.
It's on camera, my guy. I'm going to clip this after the episode and tag you on Twitter.
Right now, I said I would like to see Brooks's breakdown before I make my pick, because that's usually what I do. But I said right now I am leaning towards Alabama. What is Justin saying? I know. Right? What a clown over here.
That's my bad. That's my bad, guys.
Talking about me leaning towards Alabama, you're already outing a guy that hasn't even hit the portal yet.
Yeah.
Real shady stuff over here.
Anyways, let's get back to the topic there. So you got everybody trying to figure out what their next steps are going to be and where they're going to go, right? So the biggest question at this point is, what's Stetson Bennett going to do? And that's the thing, because I sat there and I watched his interview on Good Morning America, which if you haven't watched that, please go watch that. It is the best 5-minute interview I've ever seen him do.
He did not know where he was or what time it was or what was going on or anything.
But it was great. And I think that he was in the state of mind that he was, is where he let little things slip out that just kind of is what makes me sit back and say, what's he going to do? Because he was asked by Michael Strahan what's next for him. And after he kind of stumbled through his words for a couple seconds there, trying to figure out how to phrase what he was trying to say and stuff, he came out and said that he was going to play football next year. The question of where he was going to play football came down to whether or not the coaching staff made the right decisions. And what he means by that is, I think he's going to have somebody like Kirby Smart walk in, sit down with him and say, hey, if you come back, you're going to start with us. Because what he won't be able to do is come back in and say, all right, it's an open competition and you have to win the job again. Because that's not a good situation for him in his career, right? Like him going into that with the room being at that point, potentially JT Daniels. But I think at that point, if he comes back, JT Daniels probably dips. But JT Daniels, potentially, you got Carson Beck, potentially, you got Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton at this point, which Gunnar Stockton, I think you take him out of the equation. In my mind, there's no chance that he's winning the starting job next year because he's the true freshman. Like he hasn't been on campus. Kirby's not going to start the true freshman when he has those other guys. I mean, he would have to be a Bryce Young 4,500-yard passer in order to win that starting job himself. So, but that's my opinion, obviously.
In my opinion, if this is just me, if I was Kirby Smart and Todd Monken, in my opinion, with the fact that you have Brock Vandagriff, you have Gunnar Stockton coming in, potentially you have a JT or Carson Beck on there as well, and possibly a Stetson Bennett. In my opinion, with that situation, you have to open up the competition again. When you have that many names in the mix, or even just if you have just Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton on roster, if it's just those two guys and Stetson Bennett, I think you have to just open up the competition again. See who you have at that moment. See, because you're going to have Brock Vandagriff has another year under his belt at that point. He's been in the system for a while. He's learned the playbook. He's kind of gotten his feet wet in some situations. Open it up. It's not going to hurt you to open up the competition and see who's the better player at this point, because you, like Kirby Smart says, he always wants to play the best player. Stetson Bennett was the best player for the position this year. But I'd say open it back up. See who delivers. See who shines in the brightest moments. Go into G-Day and say, like, we don't know who's going to be the starter. Go out there and earn it right now. Let's see who performs the best. In my opinion, that's what I would do. I would not tell Stetson, if you come back, you're the starter.
And I don't think he will. And I think that's kind of what I get to with the reason I brought it up.
I think it all boils down to how Stetson feels. That's all
it does.
That's all it's going to boil down to.
And the reason I said it like I did too is because of that comment. And then Kirby Smart, when he was talking to Reese Davis, and he was asked about Stetson Bennett, and he said, I would love for Stetson to come back. He goes, if he gives us the best chance to win, I would love to have Stetson come back and lead this team next year. That was his phrasing, and it comes down to, once again, is if he gives us the best chance to win, which is what he said all year. It's what he always says at that position or every position.
Exactly.
It's what he says at every position. And so what that tells me is he's not going to lock it down and say, if you come back, you have the job. So with that being said, if he's not going to say that, because I don't think he will, I think that means that Stetson Bennett, for his own sake and his own career at this point, he's probably going to transfer. And I don't think it's going to be a decision you hear this week. I think it's probably going to be like a week or two.
Yeah, it'll take some time.
He'll probably push it towards when he has to make certain decisions. Although at the same time, school started, so maybe it would have to be this week. If he's going to transfer, well, he could do a grad. No, I don't know. All right, so here's the thing. What are the rules on this? Because he's a COVID year. He's got an extra COVID year.
I think you can be enrolled in classes and still be in the transfer portal, because like all these
I'm
guys.
just saying, as far as being able to get into other courses at another school this semester.
Well,
which gives you spring practice, spring ball, all that kind of stuff.
Well, if you're Stetson right now, you're probably close to finishing anyways. So
he's got to be graduated at this point.
Yeah, so he may not even really be taking classes at this. I don't know. I mean, he has to be taking classes, but I think
he should be graduated at this point. He's a fifth-year player.
But really, it could just be a situation where he's like, yeah, I'll take some classes here. And then like he could just take classes where he wants to go in the summertime, like finish out his semester at UGA or what. I don't know how that works.
I don't know. And the reason I say with him, it's really difficult because he's not even like a grad transfer necessarily. He's got an extra COVID year. Yeah. That's the reason that he can come back next year, because he's played 5 years worth of school. Because of with some of it being transferring to a junior college is what plays into some of that as well. And then along with having the COVID years, why he could come back for a 6th college football season. Yeah. So, but my point of it is, I think you're going to see him make the decision to potentially transfer somewhere else, because Kirby Smart, in my head, there's no way he can tell him, and I don't think he would lie to him. And so I think he would tell him it's an open competition, because that's what he tells every recruit that comes in. Gunnar Stockton, Brock Vandagriff, that's what he tells all of them.
I think that's how it should always be. It should always be an open competition.
100% agree.
So
yeah. So I think that's how it's going to play out, which means at that point I think he transfers somewhere else. And if he transfers somewhere else, that means I think everything else kind of stays similar at that point. I think you potentially see JT Daniels come back at that point. Carson Beck, I'm not gonna sit here and say a player's gonna transfer outside of like I'm not gonna speculate on other people.
I don't like doing that.
Just based on the comments that we got from Stetson Bennett is why I'm speculating on his situation, because he kind of left it up for interpretation.
Fair conversation to have, but we're not gonna sit here and say like this guy's going to transfer or anything.
So let's just say, because of that, let's just say everything else stays the same. So that means you've got JT Daniels, Carson Beck. Those are the two I think your main. Realistic position, like going for QB1 at that time.
I would agree.
And then you got Brock Vandagriff, who like honestly could come up and surprise you as well and end up getting in that conversation, because there's been plenty of comments about him being the most accurate quarterback, just a little raw because he was a true freshman. And then you got Gunnar Stockton, who once again, I think there is a 0% chance that you see Gunnar Stockton play meaningful snaps this year, unless all kinds of crazy stuff.
They said Stetson Bennett had a 0% chance of starting.
No, that was different.
Your lesson?
That was different. Different
already
scenario.
Writing Gunnar off like we did Stetson Bennett. He's a hater. Jeremiah's a hater.
Stetson Bennett
He's out here hating.
Stetson Bennett transferred back in and was already like a third or something year player at the point when he came back. It's a little different than talking about a true freshman.
Don't write him
Has
off.
Kirby Smart ever put like a true freshman outside of Justin Fields, a true freshman quarterback with an injury as a second string guy. He did not have.
That's how Stetson got his opportunity both times.
Here we go. Jackson Muschamp. I forgot about him.
And Jackson
There's
Muschamp.
Justin again.
We're forgetting
Justin's
about
still
the most valuable person in the quarterback room.
You got Jackson Muschamp out there. He could come back and play, but
he's already got
realistically,
the elite athletic genes in him. He already has an advantage over everybody. Jackson Muschamp has an advantage over all the quarterbacks in that quarterback room already.
Oh yeah. But anyways, with the quarterback room looking like it does, at that point,
never say never. See, thank you. Never say never.
Yeah, but she's a little biased.
Okay, whoa. I think you're being a little biased right now.
Oh,
you're hating on me for saying I was siding with Bama last week, and you're over here writing guys off already. All right, he's in the portal. He has 0% chance of starting. No, that's not how we're going to do things. I'm not a hater.
Yeah, right? Okay. Yeah. Anyways, with those guys in the quarterback room.
Go to his Twitter and call him out right now.
All 5 of you. Come on. Oh, yeah. But anyways, let's get back on topic. So with that quarterback room being what it is, how do you kind of see that playing out? If you have a JT
If
everybody stays except Stetson Bennett goes.
If everybody stays and Stetson leaves, I would say it's between Beck and JT at that point. But then again, it's just so unpredictable because, like I said, you have a ton of athletes in that quarterback room, and they're all really talented. We know that much. And so
that's a tough spot.
You just never know what can happen in a spring. Like, you just never know who wants it more is kind of how you have to look at it, and who's going to take advantage of their opportunities. Because Carson Beck was presented with an opportunity, necessarily didn't take advantage of it based on what we heard in practice. But Stetson Bennett did take advantage of his opportunities. So it's all going to depend on who makes their moments count the most in that position. And so if it's in that scenario, I don't know who would come out as a starter, but I do know it would be the guy that takes advantage of their opportunities, and G-Day would play a big part in that. And I think G-Day would be really exciting to watch if that's the scenario. If you've got 4 quarterbacks fighting for
four realistic spot, 4 guys that would
be a lot of fun to watch.
Think about that. Oh my gosh, because at that point you're not looking at like 1 or 2 guys or one guy you just kind of assume is starting kind of thing.
You're looking at 4 guys.
You're looking at each side of the team having 2 guys that realistically could start. That would be a crazy G-Day.
Maybe that's what we get.
But think about, this is the last thing too on that area, is the best ability is your availability. And I think that's what plagued JT Daniels. That's what's plagued JT Daniels his entire collegiate career, going back to USC. And so it comes down to, I think the long-term decision on this is, if JT Daniels also comes back in the scenario that we presented, he comes back, right? Can he stay healthy? Because he has been injury plagued, and some players just have that career. There's plenty of guys out there that I've watched in several sports and everything like that. You look at and you go, had he not dealt with this injury, what would have happened? How good could he have been? Where could he have gone in his career? And you never get to know because you never see them. They're not available. Because once again, your best ability is your availability. And so it comes down to if JT Daniels can stay healthy. If JT Daniels comes out and stays healthy, I think JT Daniels is who they're going to start.
He's already the 3rd favorite to win the Heisman again. So according to, I think it was PFF that put that out. So obviously JT Daniels is the starter next year. Case closed. Put it in the books. That's the guy.
This is a request for Georgia fans. If he comes back and we have a genuine open battle for this position on there, can we please sit back and rock with whoever Todd Monken and Kirby Smart go with?
That ruins the fun out of everything.
Can we just sit back and just enjoy whoever they decide? Because it's going to be worse than this year.
Fuels our content.
You thought it was bad this year?
It's bad every year. It's bad. It's horrible.
It's been bad.
I hate it.
The only time it hasn't been bad that I could go back and look is when you had Matt Stafford and Aaron Murray, and then everyone just because think at least we didn't get in the spot where we had a Hudson Mason year.
Good Lord.
Think about that. Everyone's sitting here acting like Stetson Bennett was Hudson Mason, when in reality he compares exactly to what Jake Fromm was.
I just want to say the 2 quarterbacks that Georgia won a national championship were Buck Belue and Stetson Bennett. I think that's pretty remarkable, in my opinion. The fact that Buck Belue, who threw 2 passes all year long, it seemed like, in that season, and Stetson Bennett, who was considered a game manager and by no means elite talent. Those are your two national championship quarterbacks.
Because this is an episode where we just continue to interact with Justin all night. We're going to do it again.
I
love it too. It's fun.
Justin.
It's fun. Justin, we enjoy your comments.
There you go.
But this is exactly what I agree with too.
Be
Like
happy.
this is what you should think. You should be happy that you have this many options.
Thankful
The
that
problem
Kirby
with
Smart
that
put him
is-
in that position.
The problem with that is this is how it's going to play out. Georgia's going to pick whichever one of those four guys, right? Kirby Smart and Todd Monken, they're going to decide on it. That one guy is going to go out there and have a bad game and throw 2 interceptions.
But
One
what
time.
about Brock Vandegrift?
Gunnar Stockton's here now. You'll hear his
We
name
got a
pop up.
5-star. Let's put in the 5-star.
That's how it's always.
But this is where it's going to be even more interesting, though, is because at this point, the way it's stacking up to be is you're not going to have a Stetson Bennett walk-on to really sit there and say, well, he's just the much lesser guy from what every fan thought, right? Now this decision's going to be, all right, well, you went with JT Daniels, but you've got Carson Beck, former 4-star. You got Brock Vandegrift, a 5-star, and you've got Gunnar Stockton, who's a 5-star as well, right?
4-star.
4-star. He's a 4-star now?
Yeah.
Anyways, beside the point, I guess, at the end of it. But, like, my point of it is you've got those guys that are highly touted guys. You're not your former walk-on guy coming on that just happens to fall into the spot because of just the way things played out and he took advantage of it. It's a guy that, like, was highly recruited out of high school kind of thing. If you thought it was bad this year, it's going to be really bad next year. Just think that you remember how it was with Jake Fromm and Justin Fields. It'll be that intense again. It'll be that intense again this year. And I'm not getting into that discussion of which way that should have gone or shouldn't have gone, whatever on there. That's how intense it's going to be this year as far as the fan base goes. Can we please not do that? Like, that's just my ask. I know that's a tall order.
Do you know who you're talking to right now? Do you realize
I
who you're
do.
talking? I don't want to group all Georgia fans into that
There's a lot of
category
them out there.
because
like that,
there's
though.
a lot that don't make controversy out of the QB position, but there's also quite a few that do. But, I mean, I think and it's kind of like a double-edged sword because Kirby recruits so well at every position, you're always going to have a QB controversy every single year from now on because he's always going to have elite talent at the position, which is also going to mean, and we've said this, who's the favorite player on every single roster?
Backup quarterback.
The backup
Second-string
quarterback. So till the end of time, there's always going to be some type of QB controversy. But like Justin said, just be glad that you have multiple options and you're not just stuck with one guy and you're just praying that he does not suffer from injury and you have to roll out.
The next time that you decide, like, you want to go out there and say, well, you think that they should go with the next guy up, the next quarterback or situation, right? When you think that, evaluate your own point of view on there and say, how often do you make that type of comment about the cornerback, the wide receiver, the linebacker, the defensive lineman? How often do you say, hey, Chaz Chambliss should have been playing this season instead of like Quay Walker because Quay Walker busted one coverage?
I mean, Chaz Chambliss is...
He did light up that Michigan player.
The offenses do what Chaz Chambliss tells them to do. I mean, that's kind of how he rocks on the defensive side of the football.
But
that's
and
kind
think
of a
about
Discord
that, though.
joke, by the way, if you're not
Is
in
it?
there. Oh, yeah. The Chaz
Yeah, the Chaz Chambliss
Not
one.
even,
How did I
this
miss
man
that?
is an admin on the...
I
on
missed
the,
that.
Justin, ban him right now.
Justin can't
He
ban
doesn't even
me.
know about the Chaz Chambliss joke in the Discord. He's not even
I'm
a true
busy
fan.
sometimes, man. You picked Alabama. Get out of here.
Oh, it always comes back to my flaws.
It does.
Always.
But that's my point, though. If you're going to sit here and go, we should be going with a different quarterback because you know what they should be doing and what's happening. Think about, there's a reason you don't say that with like other position groups. Like you don't know what they should be doing. I don't know what they should be doing. Jonathan doesn't know what they should be doing. That's why we sit here on the show and sit back and go, we're going to rock with what Kirby decided to do. That's why we've been rocking with Stetson Bennett for 2 months now. Like, because we decided to just support it because we don't see what happens in practice every single day. Mm-hmm. And we don't know who the next guy should be, because we don't know what's going on. So at the end of the day, if you can't sit here and justify an argument for why Chaz Chambliss should have been playing because he's, a great backup at his position, then just sit back and enjoy what they decide to do with the quarterback too. That's all I want to say, because you never hear that argument from those same guys. They couldn't tell you who backups are at some positions sometimes. And you're like, which you don't have to know every single player on the team. That's not what I'm the decision I'm making. But the fact that you don't means you don't know as much as the coaches do. That's just the clear-cut answer of it. And if you don't, then you just got to enjoy what they do.
Yep. Now, as Justin pointed out, it does provide us with some content to write about. So if you do want to read about stuff like that,
You're
you
not
can
wrong.
go over to Dogs Daily on SI.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. But we don't do clickbaiting, all right? We don't do none of that nonsense. Brooks Austin runs a good show over there. He keeps us in line, of course, with the stories that we write, but we all put out good content. Everybody that contributes over there does put out some really solid info and articles and content. So if you're ever in need of that, Dogs Daily on SI is definitely the place to be. Always putting out consistent content from multiple people. So it's a great place to be if you're wanting some Georgia football info. So
You're not wrong. Those are great conversations for us because we get to write about all that kind of stuff. I mean, if the fans want to talk about it, then we want to write about it. Yeah, we want to write about it.
I'll be more than happy to do that.
I will probably write an article or two in the offseason about the quarterback situation coming up before the season starts.
I'll be having one about why Gunnar Stockton could have a chance at winning the quarterback battle. That's what I'll be writing about. And I'll be sure to cite my sources and everything and be sure to put this clip from this podcast in there as well.
Please do. Maybe we'll get some exposure.
Maybe.
We'll get some more people to watch. Tell Brooks you want to clip it and put it in there.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
There you go. But after all of it, we're about an hour, 15 minutes into this episode.
It was after the national championship, so how could we not go?
I could keep talking, but it's been fun. But I know Brooks himself has something coming up probably around 9 o'clock that I'm going to want to watch too. So I want to get home and see that as well.
So you guys should go check that out as well.
Brooks Austin on Patreon, and it might be actually probably on YouTube for that.
Probably
one.
Is on YouTube.
That one's probably on YouTube.
So you can check that out.
The Film Guy, go check him out.
Film Guy Network.
But as always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams here. Congratulations, Dog fans. We finally got that national championship. And as always, keep it classy in the Classic City.
Like and subscribe. All of that good stuff. Please do that. Push us up the YouTube categories, whatnot. It really helps us out. So subscribe to us.
Right here.
Follow us on Twitter as well. That also helps as well. But yeah, if you're watching, please like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. Help us push out our content even more. Really trying to keep it growing and consistent. So we really appreciate you guys who do that for us.
Absolutely.
Now
you
can hit the final line.
As always, keep it classy in Classic City, and we will catch you guys next week. Go Dogs.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dogs Daily on Sports Illustrated. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Dogs Daily crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at Jeremiah_Stod7, to Kyle at DK Fubderberg, and Jonathan at 22_Jman. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime, go Dogs!